Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Darcy, this hearing is about whether this rule is legal. There's of course, an appeals court in one section of the country who has expressed serious doubts as to whether it's legal. I share those doubts. But in order for it to be legal, it's got to be signed off on not only by you and by the administrator of the EPA, but it's got to be based on certain criteria developed by the two agencies. Now, in the preamble, which I take it you subscribe to, the preamble.
Yes.
Thank you. You say the immersion in science along with practical expertise developed through case-specific determinations across the country in diverse settings. Case-specific determinations across the country in diverse settings. What does that mean?
It means that in making determinations across the country, individual cases were considered when the discussions with the Corps staff and EPA were being developed to put this rule together.
Individual cases.
Yes, sir. In order to make a determination, you have to look at the on-the-ground conditions in many instances. So those were some of the cases that were discussed.
All right. But in your letter dated August 28 back to Chairman Inhofe, you state your letters seek field observations relied upon by the Army for certain statements in the technical support document and the rule. The letters suppose that there are specific field observations in the administrative record that correspond to each statement. In fact, rather than relying on individual field observations, the rule was the product of years of collaborative decision-making and so on and so forth. It seems to me that your letter, which I just quoted, contradicts the statement in the preamble that there were case-specific determinations across the country.
Senator, the case-specific determinations that were discussed and included in the conversation in developing the final rule were part of the examples that our technical folks discussed when developing the rule.
But they were not field observations or specific field observations in the administrative record, because that's what your letter just said.
Well, the field, again, the field observations that were discussed as part of the development of the rule aren't like a specific condition in one specific area.
Well, can you supply to the committee, I notice you turned to counsel on that question, can you supply to the committee on the record what the case-specific determinations across the country and in diverse settings actually is in this case?
I will consult with counsel, but if at all possible, we will provide that for the record.
Okay. Why wouldn't it be possible?
This rule is undergoing litigation, so within the parameters of the litigation is what I would have to be mindful of.
Okay. Well, we'll deal with you on that. Also, the preamble is also contradicted by the assertions of General Peabody in his letter dated April 24, which the Chairman has already pointed out. General Peabody said, General Peabody seems to underscore and support the statement in your letter dated August 28 when he says, the preamble of the proposed rule and the draft final rule state that the rulemaking has been a joint endeavor of the EPA and the Corps, and that both agencies have jointly made significant findings, reached important conclusions, and stand behind the final rule. Those statements are not accurate with respect to the draft final rule, as the process followed to develop it greatly limited the Corps' input, a practice that has continued thus far in the interagency review process. It just seems to me, Ms. Darcy, that 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 this statement contradicts the preamble, and that we have a situation here where the political appointee to the Corps of Engineers does indeed support the rule, but that the great body of fact-finding behind it is not there. What would you say to that assertion?
I would say that what's reflected in the Peabody memos are considerations that the Corps had, which had been raised to me. Those considerations and concerns, many were decisions that had to be made as to what was going to be included in the final rule, and those decisions were mine to make.
But not based on field observations.
Much of the technical expertise and experience of the Army Corps of Engineers was considered when making many of these decisions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.